All right. Well, welcome back to the podcast, my beautiful wife.
Thanks.
So we were talking, and Melissa's been doing a lot of research. Turns out she's very analytical and really loves the numbers, which is good because I thought I did, but I really don't. I guess it depends on what it is. But, we were talking, and, she's been running the flipping business for a while now, for over a year, with me focusing a lot more on the software. And so you told me, we're going to stop doing direct mail at the beginning of this year, which kind of, was a surprise to me because that was a big plan for last year. So let's talk today about why it is that you saw the importance of just, quitting the direct mail when that was I guess we could start with, the plan for last year and doing a lot of direct mail and go from there.
Okay. So, I think we had just kind of come off of the last mastermind, like right before, towards the end of 2017. And, everybody was talking about, 2016, everybody was talking about direct mail. And so at the beginning of 2017, we were kind of still doing what we've always done, but I thought, let's just really hit the direct mail super hard and see what happens, because although we had been doing it, we weren't doing it super consistently or on a very large scale. And so I thought, let's really just go all out with the direct mail and see what happens. And so we did that. So we started a bunch of mailing campaigns, and the year went on and we were getting some deals, but it wasn't performing, I felt like, the way I'd hoped it would when I started looking at what we were spending on it. And so I started analyzing the numbers kind of towards the middle of the year just to see where we were at, and was pretty disappointed. So
just to give an idea of how much mail we were sending. So what was the plan? Roughly what amount of mail were we sending, and what list and all that kind of stuff?
We were mailing to high equity for most of the year. And then we did start adding in some unknown equity, which produced nothing at all. So we quickly put a stop to that one. I think we had about 30,000 addresses on the mailing list based on our criteria. And we were hitting them, we had them separated by zip codes so that it wouldn't be just so much at one time, because every mailing was probably between $2,300 to $2,500 we were spending per week on mailing. And
so what was the criteria for those lists for the high equity? Do you remember exactly what that was?
I think it was anything under 200,000 with more than 50% equity, with $200,000 value, more than 50% equity, and the I think we had under or over age 40, something like that. Because I think it was people, older people would have more equity in their houses. So,
right. And then what is the unknown equity?
The unknown equity is just it's just not stated how much equity they have. So they could have some, they could have none. It's just, I guess that field wasn't completed in the searches. So
right. So for list source, right, has unknown equity as one of the selections, I think, in the drop down when you're selecting ranges. And then there's like a big group of them that we used to always just kind of not mess with, because why would you want unknown? We want known, and known to have the X amount. But we did try that, right? And then you said that really didn't produce anything at all.
Yeah, I could count on my hand actually how many phone calls we did get from that. It wasn't very many. So that was quickly just put to the side. But, I started looking at everything, like I said, about halfway through the year, and about September, I said, you know what, we are spending a lot of money. We have spent a lot of money on this, and we need to stop what we're doing with this right now and reevaluate all of it.
And at that point, so were we getting new lists, or were we mailing to the same people on a regular basis? And what kind of spacing was between those mailings?
Yeah, it was the same list, but it was a cycle. So we were hitting each list. The goal was to hit each address on each list 6 times. And I think we were mailing. So the cycle was coming through like every 4 to 6 weeks. They should get a piece of mail from us. So with 30,000, it's a lot.
Right. Okay. And then, so you looked at the numbers, and does that mean, like we've done for a long time, where we looked at, the cost per lead and cost per deal for each source? I know you had gone in and done a much deeper analysis of those numbers, and it kind of blew me away, and I was excited and that's why we're on the show right now is, why did you feel like you needed to look deeper into the numbers, and then how did you do that? What was the process, and what findings did you have?
This is where it gets really fun. Actually, it turned out to be a really big project, but I really enjoyed the process of it and everything that I learned from it. So, yeah, we, like you said, we always did the really vague, how many leads did we get, and then how many deals did that turn into? But we weren't really thinking about if they were qualified or good leads, because you do get a lot of leads. We get leads that come in from different places all over the country, and those are just kind of not throwaway, but we try to capitalize on those if we can, but they're not qualified leads for our market for us. And so what I did was I sat down, and it took I tracked my time, and it was about 8 hours. You probably remember.
No.
And 8 hours I spent, and I went through every single lead from 2017 that we got. And then I actually went into each property and started looking and reading the notes and everything, and trying to figure out, did that lead turn into a deal? Like, how far did that lead go in the process from coming in as a suspect to becoming an actual deal or having an appointment? So what we did was we separated suspects, prospects, and then marketing qualified leads. So, the suspect is just anything that comes in. Doesn't matter, where it came from or where it is or anything. It was just a lead. And then from there, it goes into a prospect, which is basically where, they reached out to us. We had some contact with them. Maybe we talked to them on the phone and decided if it, was something we could pursue or not pursue. And then from those prospects, then how many of those prospects became an actual qualified lead, something that we would actually make an appointment for. Even if the appointment got canceled for some reason, it was definitely a good enough lead that we would spend the time to go on an appointment for it. And so looking at it that way, it really takes that number down from when it came in as a suspect to actually becoming a good lead. And so what I really wanted to do is see how many of these marketing channels, because we do a lot of marketing, which one of these are producing the best qualified leads? Because that's really where it counts, right? That's where you're going to get your deals from.
Right. And so first question, we'll come back to this, but the qualified leads, you said we make a decision. They're qualified because we made an appointment to go to see the property. So we'll need to find out what was the criteria for going to see a property. But before that, you had mentioned, going through all of this for all these properties and, through the CRM system and, finding out whether, so you're having to go through these systems and look at these notes for all these leads and 8 hours. And it's like, well, if you think about 8 hours, that's maybe one workday, but really that was tedious time, very time consuming work, because how many leads were there roughly that you had to go through?
720.
Exactly. That gives everybody an idea of like how, painstaking that kind of was, but it was worth it to do that research. Now let's go back to the, the criteria used to determine whether we're going to see a property or not. because that makes it a qualified or an unqualified lead.
Right. So basically the numbers just have to fit. It's kind of a couple of things. I mean, it starts with the numbers, if the numbers make sense for what we want for, for a rehab, or if it's something we might want to own or finance, or if it's something we know we have buyers for on our buyers list. So it's really knowing, kind of like what our end buyers are looking for if we're assigning something. So it's kind of a combination of all of those things. There's no super like hard and fast kind of thing. It's just the numbers look good. The area looks good. We know somebody that will probably buy this property, and the motivation also, how motivated are they? They're super motivated and they've got a lot of equity, and, that's something we definitely want to set an appointment and go to.
Okay. So you're really looking at, from each of these marketing channels and campaigns, which ones are producing the actual good leads and not the ones where people are calling and saying, oh, my house is beautiful. I just fixed it up, did all this and that and everything, and want to know if you can, how much you're willing to give me. I'll sell it if you're willing to give me, this crazy amount that's over market value and all that kind of stuff, kind of weeding through those because they're not really qualified for what we, want as an investment property, or, the likelihood of us getting the deal is not very high.
Right. And that's the thing that going through all this that I started to realize. So I was looking for patterns and just to, like really breaking down like by source what all these things looked like. And what I found was that the direct mail, it was not, they might not be super motivated. They're not coming to us, initially, like they are with the online stuff. We're just kind of throwing it out there, and then they call us if they're interested enough to say, well, maybe I do want to sell. But just because they have a lot of equity in the house doesn't necessarily mean that they want to sell the house. And so it's throwing a lot of stuff out there to people that they might not be motivated. The motivation isn't as high as with other sources. And so looking at all that, when I looked at the numbers, looking at qualified leads to what actually became a deal was not super high. And when I started looking through like, well, what is bringing in more qualified leads? What's converting better? It was actually the organic stuff. So it was people coming to our website. And I think a big part of that is just because they are motivated. They are out there looking for us. We're not, directly approaching them through a mail piece or something. They want to sell and they are actively looking. And so those seem to be much better qualified than the other.
Did you take into other consideration? I think you had mentioned, also just looking at factors, which I've never, I kind of had an idea and a rough thinking about this kind of thing, but you had really, thought way more about how much work is involved in these different sources as well, because it's not only those numbers that don't look so good for direct mail. And do you have the numbers for the qualified leads to actual deals? Yeah. For direct mail, just the direct mail one?
Mm-hmm. On the direct mail, so what ended up being qualified leads, we got 91, and only 13 of those turned into deals.
Okay.
And the cost was pretty high per deal.
What was the cost per deal?
It was actually the highest cost out of all of our marketing channels, and it was $5,555.41.
Okay, and that was per deal?
Per deal.
Per deal, yeah. Okay, and so what other things, because, you were looking at what other cost other than financial cost, you were looking at the things like, just the fact of manpower and the time and having to field all those calls from unmotivated sellers and things like that. and then dealing with the angry calls, right? Because I don't know of any other marketing channel that produces those pissed off calls like direct mail did. So what else did you look at? Did you look at those things and just kind of considered, anything else that wasn't mentioned that we don't maybe necessarily, or most investors might not necessarily consider in analyzing these different deal sources?
So here's a little thing that occurred to me while I was doing all this is I got really way into this spreadsheet for some reason, but everybody talks about like cost per lead, cost per deal and stuff. But I was really interested in conversions, and looking at all this, I became really interested in the attrition rates too, just to see, everybody, you're going to have fallout. So I wanted to know, are any of these channels, do they have a higher fallout rate than, what do those look like? And when I started looking at that, the direct mail also had the highest fallout rate or attrition rate. So it was considerably higher than all the other channels that we were doing. So that was a big factor for me. And I think it goes back to that motivation thing too. They're not quite as committed with those. Something else that I looked at too, that I started digging into was I was curious about the average profit per source. I wanted to see, so basically I took all the deals that we did and I keep a profit sheet, listing all the properties and like what was our final net profit on that deal. And then I grouped those by marketing channel and averaged them out. And it was okay, but we had other channels that actually produced more profitable deals also.
Right. And that's huge. And I really, hope everybody out there is listening to that, because if you're not looking at that, what else really matters, right? If you've done enough of a certain marketing channel that the deals produced were just not that good of deals, you could be looking at, well, I'm getting a lot of leads from this source and the cost per lead is not very high. And you're thinking that this is a good lead source or deal source. And then you take it a step further and look at the cost per deal and saying, well, we're getting a lot of leads or not getting a lot of leads, but the cost per deal is really low, so it's good. But if you've got those numbers and then you take it a step further like Melissa did and kept track of the profit per channel and finding that even though you might have a lot of leads for a channel and then a low cost per deal for a channel, but then your profit's not very good, you got to look at the return on investment for that channel to determine that. And that's what you did to say, hey, this isn't so good, and it's got all these other strikes against it. And when you said the fallout rate and retention rate, that's when we're getting the property under contract and then not able to wholesale it or something, or the seller backs out, or we just don't end up closing on it, right?
Right. And really, we do everything we can to keep deals from falling out. So when deals fall out, it's just a deal that couldn't be done. It's not because we couldn't close. It's because the seller refused to close, or we couldn't close because of a title issue. Not anything on our part.
Right. So all these things stacked up, and there's the temptation, right, where you are thinking we need to have these mail pieces drop X amount of times for this list to really know how this is going to work out, right? Mm-hmm. And so we kind of, we said 2017, we're going to do this and we're going to look at the numbers afterwards, because if we do it too soon, we might stop before we've actually hit them enough time where we had a good enough response rate. And you notice how we're not even talking about the response rates, because to me that doesn't really matter. It's these other things that matter. How many deals are we getting? What's the profit on those? And I don't care, because if I'm only looking at things like response rates, like you're gauging something on the wrong metric, right?
Exactly. And I think that's a big problem. That's why this was so helpful for me, because although it may have a decent response rate, it doesn't mean that it produced a qualified lead. It wasn't a good, it wasn't a good spend of the money. It doesn't matter if somebody calls you or not. It matters if that call becomes a deal or not.
Right. Right. So and you had mentioned that the direct mail in 2017 for the attrition rate, the fallout rate was higher, but how much higher? Was it like double?
It was double.
It was double. Wow. Yeah. So that's a big deal. You got problems with the properties actually even closing. And so if you're just looking at how many got under contract, you're not seeing the whole picture either, right? Wow. So what else did you find digging through all this? Have we covered?
You know, I mean, just I was digging through all this stuff, and I don't know, just this has just been so helpful for me because it's really helping me make better informed decisions about where to spend our marketing money, you know, where to spend our time. Thinking about the time factor, you know, with the stuff that was coming in organically and online, I don't have to put any work into that. So, you know, it's kind of nice because it's set up and it just runs, and there's not a whole lot of, I mean, they're still taking the calls and the stuff that's coming in from online, dealing with those leads, but we have a lead manager that handles that. But it's much less work than trying to, you know, develop and monitor our mail pieces and negotiating with the mail house and putting all this mail out and stuff. We are still doing, the only thing we're mailing is probates right now. And what we did with that was we just, initially they get a letter that's like in a handwritten envelope that we have somebody we pay, I don't know, I think like 25 cents a letter or something for. And she prints them and mails them out and everything. And then once that goes through a cycle, then it goes to the mail house and they get just a mail piece also. But that's the only thing that we're doing mail-wise anymore. We haven't mailed since September of last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we had stopped later than that. So stopped in September, huh? And so things have been cruising right along because we've put more behind the better channels, which I'm going to discuss on the training, the webinar that we're doing.
Right. Would it be okay if I shared how much we spent on direct mail last year?
Sure. Why not? Why not? Go ahead.
We spent $72,000 in direct mail.
On direct mail last year?
Yes.
2017. And that's stopping in September. So that probably would have been well over $100,000 spent in direct mail.
So I'm thinking, where could I spend $72,000 in 2018? That's a big chunk of change to have to play with. So.
Right. And we're going to talk about a lot of that on the training on the webinar. And if you're listening, head over right now to sellerleadhacks.com. I'll be doing a training and we're going to talk about the numbers, more detail about these numbers that we're talking about, from the qualified lead percentages per marketing channel to the cost per lead and deal for each of those channels. And I think we'll probably go ahead and share some of those 2018 numbers as well and talk about where we're putting more of that money in for 2018. So we're a part of, and we're also going to talk, the title of the webinar is Direct Mail is Dead. And that's also stems from just, this general shift that we've seen, right, in the mastermind group and a lot of top investors around the country, kind of talking about, that's kind of what we've seen, right, where people are talking about the response rates dropping and it just not being as effective as before, right?
Right. And I have talked to other people in other markets, big investors, just to see, is it just our market or is it happening all over the place? And it's just, I keep hearing that same thing over and over again, which was another reason why I wanted to dig into this, all these numbers on everything, because it's like, well, maybe am I doing something wrong with my mail piece? But it turns out, a lot of people are having this problem. So it's been eye-opening.
Yeah, it's interesting that you point that out, because I think that is the temptation, right? It's like with direct mail, there's so many moving parts. Well, maybe not so many moving parts, but there's so many factors that play into the different numbers. And so it's always easy to question, do we use the wrong mail piece? Should we have used a larger postcard instead of smaller postcard? Should we have used a more business professional oriented letter than a personal letter or a yellow letter, and you start questioning all those things, and you wonder if maybe that was the problem. But we've been doing direct mail for what, 15 years or 14 years, and we've dialed in those messages. So when we see this stuff happening on these pieces that have always worked, and even changing those, and knowing from past experience what should work, and finding it's just not working as well. And that's why I wanted to do that webinar as well. So everybody listening out there, to find out more of why I think that is happening. I came up with 3 reasons I feel are the cause of that for the direct mail. I'm going to share that along with these numbers and what we're doing now in 2018 to put the money in behind things that produce much better numbers and deals, and based on data, right? Data from our own flipping business, not just from, what we think or hear from other people might be working. It's what's working for us and our friends that are flipping a lot of houses around the country. What else did you want to share? I mean, we've focused on certain different marketing channels in the past, usually pretty heavily on 1 or 2. And I wanted to touch really quickly on the other issue with marketing that I think people tend to fall into traps of trying to have more lines in the water, right? Like, I'm going to try all these things, or I want the magic bullet that's going to get me all these extra deals. Do you think that we've kind of, had run into that problem before, right? And do you worry about ever running into that again, where we're trying to maybe find different sources and just end up blowing money because we're trying to, we're not spending enough time becoming experts in each of those marketing channels?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're going to have to edit this part out because I got to think for a second.
I don't edit.
Yeah, I think that before, we have done a lot of different types of marketing, but I think one thing to remember is, you do something and you have to give it enough time to produce a result. I was talking to somebody about this just the other day. You can't just, do something and like 30 days it's not working and just stop. And that was part of this whole direct mail thing. When I saw how much we were spending, and it's kind of like thinking to myself, there comes a point where you got to just stop, because it's like, I'm throwing a lot of money away now. Now we're getting to a point where I'm just spending money and I'm not getting the return that I need on this money. And so it needs to end. And I wanted to make sure, though, that I let it have enough time to produce, something measurable. So it's like, business coach always says, test and measure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's good advice. You've got to test something and give it enough time to test it, and then measure it and see if it's performing the way that it needs to. And if not, then you cut it off and you try something else. But I wouldn't recommend trying, 15 different ways of marketing all at once, because it's going to be really hard to figure out what's working and what's not working. And, we don't have like a ton of things that we're doing, but I feel like everything that we do really well. We have it very systematized. We have processes for all that stuff. So we really are able to measure well and do well what we're doing. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, it does. And it's a very good point, because that explains, maybe why that doesn't work when people try to do all these different marketing things, is because they're not committing enough to become an expert in each of those. But on top of that, your good point, it's a very, very good point. They're not measuring or taking enough time or doing enough of it to be able to measure it, to see really what's happening and whether it's working or not. Especially if you're only looking at the surface level metrics like the response rates, which doesn't tell you the whole picture. And if you don't have enough data to go on, where you've had enough actual leads or even deals from the thing, it's kind of hard to figure out whether it's going to work or not. It's like the trap that we see a lot of new investors fall into, and we fell into a lot when we first got started, of not doing enough in each channel to actually see if it worked. And especially with direct mail, because you can send out, like 300 postcards or 300 letters or something twice, and you barely get anything back, and you give up because you only look at it based on how much you spent and the fact that you don't have a deal to show for it. And then you're like, I'm throwing money in this black hole, and I'm never going to see it again, and it scares the hell out of you, and you end up just stopping it and trying something else and going online and finding, checking out BiggerPockets and other things like, what are people doing to find these deals? When really, isn't it kind of fascinating what people are doing? The larger investors around the country are doing a lot of deals. The fact that they don't do a bunch of like crazy tactics that you've never heard of before. They're using tactics that everybody knows about, but they just became experts in them.
Right. And I think that's really the key. It's like, what you're doing, and then you do it as efficiently as possible. And I'm all about being efficient.
Yeah.
Because it saves you time, it saves you money. And if you're doing, 4 different types of marketing and you're doing them well and you're producing results, then I would say you're pretty successful with your marketing.
Right. And you are very organized, and I'm super grateful for it, because I don't think we've had the success that we've had without that. And since you took over the flipping business, and I'm not just saying this to blow smoke or anything, but like since you took over the flipping business, it's been so much more organized, and you're looking at these things that I was too busy to look into and really focus on. And I was more of the throw mud at the wall and see what sticks kind of person. And so thank you for that. Anyway, I just wanted to say that, and how important that is, and how big of a deal that is to continue to do that, and how it's taken the same amount of resources that we were using before, but getting so much better results from that same amount of resources. Basically dialing everything in, right?
Right.
And that's what you've done so well. And that's what, helps us to be a lot more confident in 2018 with where we're putting all that money that we're spending on the direct mail that we've stopped, and becoming an expert in exactly those things that we're putting all that money into and we're doing so well with. But we'll share the details of all those, and on the training on sellerleadhacks.com. You can get your spot reserved. And if you're listening to this weeks after this episode's been published and recorded, I'm sure I'll be doing that training several times. So go ahead and check it out anyway. See if the page is there so that you can register for that. sellerleadhacks.com/webinar, or just sellerleadhacks.com. And you'll be able to reserve your spot for that training. It's going to be awesome. And do you have anything else to share about the topic that we've covered, or anything else?
The only thing, that I would say, I did spend a lot of time doing this, and maybe if you haven't done this before, initially it could take you some time to get through it all, but trust me when I say it has totally been worth it. And now I've actually even systematized this process now to where I'm able to do it a lot quicker. I've changed some things with how we create statuses and stuff in the CRM so that I can more quickly see the things that I need to see. So that's been, it kind of helped a lot of different things in the business, even just, how we, make notes and leads and stuff like that has been helpful, because, I need to be able to get the information that I need quickly. And so once you kind of tighten up that process, then doing this, tracking the marketing and stuff and all that becomes a lot quicker and easier. So I've actually wrapped up just about 2018. So I will have good numbers for you to share.
Cool.
And it didn't take me 8 hours. So that was awesome. And then, just being able to take it into bite-sized pieces instead of having to do a whole year at a time.
Right.
Really good
and that's
stuff.
been super helpful too, because as we've been doing a lot of the planning for the Flip Pilot software, which is the new CRM system that we've been working on, all that input from all of that research to make sure that system makes it to where you can see that stuff at a glance, like right away, is going to be super
I'm going to tell everybody I've been pushing for that. It's going to be awesome to have those reporting features for all this. So it would, it'll be nice to be able to just print a report with all this instead of going through every single deal.
Right. So super awesome. So thanks so much for taking the time to come up to the office with me. You're down the hall again. And Weston's in there. So if you've heard some noises like a little creature in the background, if you're listening to this podcast, Weston, our son, is over on the little sofa in Melissa's office.
You want to come say hi?
You going to have him come up and say hi?
Come here. Come say hi. He's going to come say hi.
Hey, buddy.
Hey, Dad.
Say hello to all the flipping junkies out there listening on the podcast.
Hi.
Are you a flipping junkie?
What?
Yeah.
You flipping junkie? Wrong answer.
He's a soccer player. All right.
All right.
You want to say goodbye to everybody? Tell everybody have a good week.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a good week.
Done.
All right. All right, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Oh, son. Come on. All right.